I don't know. They might still be there. I got a call from the GP. I had a doctor's appointment today. I forgot to save in my diary, but I might still go up.
But what really freaked me about you is that you actually sing the Chinese national anthem, and I didn't know whether you were winding me up, and Lewis told me that it was actually genuine. That I'm kind of like, what is going on? We're in some parallel. It's not everyone who can sing the Chinese national anthem.
No, it's not.
I thought you were just making up the words.
It's not. It's a hobby for me. Chinese.
You live in China, right?
Yeah, Chinese patriotic folk music from the 1950s and 60s. It's a bunch of fantastic music that came out of the Cultural Revolution. Because the whole thing was. The Victorian 1800s is known in history as China's century of humiliation.
Okay.
And the sanctions, they lost the Opium War. They had to concede Hong Kong to Britain as a reparation. So Hong Kong became a colonial possession.
Okay.
And they paid loads and loads of money as reparations, and it left them in massive poverty.
Sure.
Right? And they were subjected to oppression by the Western colonialists, just as much of the world was, as India had trillions of dollars extricated from it.
That's true, but the issue...
Eight-nation alliance of the main global colonial powers and so on. Now, in 1949, China, the People's Republic of China, declared independence, and through the Civil War, they drove out the Japanese barbaric Nazis, and the Western colonialists, the yoke of foreign oppression, and they created an independent Chinese republic and a state. Now,
what, 1949?
1949.
Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
I mean, like they
He's
killed.
the one who declared it.
They kind of killed a lot of people and stuff. Like, I don't like that. I don't think it's like as simple as that.
Well, regardless, I'm not trying to make a political point here.
The Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution.
If you'll bear with me, I think you will appreciate the point that I'm making. Hold on, one thing at a time.
It's worth 50 million deaths, man.
Just no. Those numbers are nonsense.
Are they?
I would dispute those numbers. However, I would say no. But what I'm trying to say, I'm not saying it's true or it's false. I'm just saying, as far as the Chinese history is concerned, you had the military, political, and economic revolution.
Right.
And in 1966, they declared the Cultural Revolution. So they expelled the colonial influence on the military, political, and economic power, but they still had the white man in their minds. So they created a cultural revolution, the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, to have a revival of native Chinese culture in the arts and culture.
Well, that's absolutely incorrect. There's one thing I do know, and that's one thing I've got a major issue with. We can agree about the humiliation of China. Okay, I can understand that. But what I have learned is, because I'm a musician, this concept that the Chinese communists were actually responsible for a great flowering of traditional Chinese culture is absolute nonsense. In fact, what they did, as far as I know, they actually cut out all the traditional Chinese culture. Even today, you can't look at the traditional Chinese music, traditional songs, traditional melodies, traditional meditation practice. Not that I agree with them. They're all about controlling, micro-controlling. When they were here at the piano, I actually experienced that firsthand, man. They were very, very authoritarian.
Well, those guys were, as I said before, those guys are utter idiots.
You can't have culture in an authoritarian environment. Yes, the Nazis, I'm sure, produced some nice pictures and some nice...
That's fine, but my point wasn't about China or the CCP. My point was about myself. Was the fact that...
So I'm into the CCP, right? I don't like this that they're great for the arts. I don't agree with that.
Well, they may not be great for the arts, but regardless...
What do you think, Lewis? I don't think they're good for the arts.
Arts is a subjective thing. It's about taste, but I had a period where I got well into the music of the Cultural Revolution, and there was a lot of nice music that came out of that I quite appreciated.
Yeah, but it's propaganda.
My point was I had a hobby.
Listen, the problem about
the Chinese patriotic music.
The problem with the patriotic music, I understand that it has its own unique aesthetic value.
Bright and cheerful.
Yeah, the problem is it is totally propagandistic. That is the problem. For example, if you see the communist art and those pictures, you can say yes, it's an interesting iconography. but look at the message behind it. For example, I'm sure I could produce a very nice swastika, and it could be all beautiful, and we could admire it, but I'm sure the message behind that, it would be absolutely anathema to most people. You could say, oh, the beautiful patriotic music, the beautiful symbols. Yes, but look at the message behind it. 50 million deaths. I don't think so.
Anyway,
sorry, I'm not buying it, mate.
My whole point was just that
I'm not buying it.
It's a hobby of mine. That's all I was trying to say. I was giving the background. I have a hobby. I personally quite enjoy the Chinese patriotic music. At one time I did.
At what cost?
I learned a lot of it. Well, we can speak about what costs. You're talking about millions of deaths, tens of millions of deaths.
What would you say to people like Brian Ferry, who said that he really liked the Nazi aesthetic, who really liked the Nazi films, really liked the Nazi? You could say, okay, great, I can appreciate it for what it stands for, but the message behind that is not very positive, and it's the same with the patriotic stuff from the Communist Party. It has its own aesthetic value, but at the cost of what? You know.
Well, what is the cost? Let's say it's got the cost
50 million deaths.
Where did you get that number from? Because I always heard it was 60 million.
Do you believe that number then? What do you think it is?
Well, I've often, most often heard 60 million.
60 million. Okay, so that's more.
Yeah. But I've never heard 50 million before.
Well,
but,
60. I mean, Lewis is the expert, you know. But I don't think any patriotic.
But I don't accept 60 million. I mean, what? You just say a number, but you need to describe the number and what it refers to. What 60 million are you referring to?
Where did it come from then?
I think it mainly came from a man named Frank de Cotter, who's a Dutch professor of history at SOAS, around the corner from here. And he wrote a book called, I don't even remember what it was called, but there was a lot of dishonesty. And if you read the book and you work out and you look inside the book, because that's where everyone gets the number 60 million from.
There's a lot of dishonesty.
There is a lot of dishonesty and mathematical dishonesty.
And propaganda. I mean, if art is used to brainwash people, if art is used to change your paradigm so that you support the CCP.
Sometimes it's used to make people more inspired for a cause and united.
But you can't criticize that government. You know, that government does not allow any influence that it doesn't control. It's a control freak, the CCP.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of control in China, and I don't really appreciate that. My point was just that I have a hobby of Chinese patriotic music, and mind you, the patriotic music is mostly old patriotic music from the 1950s and 60s.
I mean, as I said, that's
and
like
70s.
As I said, for me, that's like saying, well, I've got a hobby of collecting Nazi memorabilia. All right, fine, but like, you know what I mean? You know, I wouldn't go on about it too much.
I mean, you talk about patriotic music being a thing from the past, but there's still patriotic songs today.
Yeah,
a lot of them are banned. A lot of them are banned in China today. You know, there's been a rewriting of history at varying levels in the last few decades, specifically the last 4 decades or so. There's been
anyway,
rewriting
this
of history.
conversation could go on forever. But yeah, appreciate it, John. Thank you. All right, have a good day, mate.
You too.